It just doesn't get much better than Italy. The art, the architecture, and maybe most of all, the food. Italy's economy relies on all of us thinking exactly that. The food industry here is one of the country's greatest sources of wealth. But nearly the entire food supply chain has been infiltrated by an old, familiar force, the mafia.
Well,
the mob has taken over parts of food production, transportation, and distribution, and is pulling in over $20 billion a year by doing so. It's an elaborate setup that is almost entirely hidden from the view of outsiders. And for most people that have seen it and have tried to expose it, they've quickly found themselves in grave danger.
I'm not going to speak exactly about this. They're talking about the mafias that are in Italy. They're not talking about the American mafia. The American mafia are, generally speaking, first generation Americans. You know, they migrated here from Italy. Their parents didn't speak English. Their parents came here and they brought their children or newborns here, and they grew up Americanized. A lot of them didn't even learn how to speak Italian or whatever. But this is the mafias that are in Italy, you know. And the American mafia, which I call it, and which a lot of scholars call it, and the native Italian mafias, they had a relationship with one another, but there were some cultural differences. Whenever, the guy who got killed with the cigar, when he got killed and he had a cigar hanging out his mouth when he was dead. Hold on, what was his name? Carmine Galante. Yeah, Carmine Galante, right? He's an American mobster. But what he did, he was trying to take over the Bonanno family, and he was one of the biggest heroin dealers in the world at the time. So the American mob had a relationship. Carmine Galante, this is him. Warning: he had a cigar hanging out his mouth when he died. Remember that. That was a famous photo. Look. And he died because he was basically, he took the French Connection. All this was going on in the 70s, massive heroin transportation and distribution. He had a relationship with the native Italian mafia. And what he would do is he controlled the heroin trade from Italy, from France, where they, I think the heroin was produced in Italy, and I think they sent it to France to be processed. And he had a lot of control over that pipeline, the heroin that came from Italy and France that came into America. And he was selling more heroin than anybody else. And he was basically trying to take over and become the Don of Dons. And the other bosses and the other families didn't like it because he wasn't splitting the wealth equally. He was selling so much heroin on his own that he was becoming a problem. He was the richest one, and he was trying to become the Don of Dons. So what he would do to maximize his power was he would send zips. The American mobster, the American Italians would call zips immigrants from Italy who came from their homeland, from the Italian native mafias, came here, and they really didn't speak much English or whatever. They called them zips. And the American mafia would say, the American Italians would say, you know, they didn't really have the standards that we had in America. They would kill politicians, women, children, judges. They didn't really care. And that's why Carmine Galante brought so many zips over, because he wanted to ensure his power base. Because if you're dependent on the American Italians that are in the American Italian mob, they're not really going to be listening to you. They're subservient to the commission. So the commission could go to these guys and say, look, your boss is a problem. We already did the vote. Go kill him. So he figured if he had the Sicilian zips under him, and he used them to sell his heroin and to be his bodyguards. But it didn't work out in the end because the zips were with him when he got killed, and they ended up killing him. You know, his bodyguards were with him while he was eating dinner on the patio of this restaurant that his cousin owned. And when the assassins came in to shoot, the zips actually either shot him too or ran away. It was all planned. They were in on it. So his theory didn't work. The zips didn't end up being loyal to him at the end. But afterwards, those same zips that were his bodyguards that turned on him, they were rewarded with big positions or whatever. And yeah, man, it's just, yeah, the mafia in America had control over the pizza industry here at one point. I know that. And they would actually have control over the tomato sauce, the mozzarella cheese that they would get from Italy. They had control over the production and the products and stuff like that. And they would actually smuggle heroin inside the tomato cans and the cheese and stuff like that. And they were selling keys of heroin out of pizza shops. So that's a little bit of history. Go check out that Vice documentary. I'm not going to spoil it for you. It's about how the Italian mafia in Italy took control over the production of food, which is Italy's #1 import-export. Peace.